Hello. This sermon audio is a ministry of the Town Church in Fort Collins, Colorado. If you would like to learn more about us, how to connect, or how to support us, go to our website, thetownchurch.org. While listening to the Bible preached is a healthy part of our spiritual formation, it is not the whole picture. So if you aren't a part of a local church, we encourage you to prayerfully commit to a local body of believers where you live. We're glad you can join us, and we hope God uses the following sermon to reveal more of His glory to you.
All right, go ahead and grab a Bible and get to 1 Samuel. If you don't have a Bible, there's some Bibles over here on the table. There's also the journals over there on the shelves if you want one of those to be taking notes. We are in the book of 1 Samuel together. And so we're looking at chapters 9 and 10 this week, chapters 9 and 10. 1 Samuel is in the Old Testament, which is the first half of your Bibles after Joshua, Judges, Ruth, and just before 1st and 2nd Kings. So you'll notice that the title of this series, it's going to take us several months to get through, is The King is Coming. And the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel invite us into this story of God's people and their desire for a king. And they've been through a lot, not just in these books, although we've seen a lot that they've gone through these books. They've been through a lot as a people. The history of God's people to this point, it has been a roller coaster ride between opposition and defeat and rebuilding and existing together. So it's just been this sort of up and down, and that has been their story. If you have read through the first several books of the Bible and seen from creation on how it has gone, it's been an up and down for the people of God. That God has made promises to his people from the very beginning, and he's kept them or is keeping them. The first man and woman have received a promise. To Abraham, he gave a promise, and he's keeping that. To Moses, the promises have either been kept or God is keeping them or will keep them. All the way through their story, we see the faithfulness of God, listen, even as they are unfaithful. God's been faithful. Back and forth, all around, up and down. 1 Samuel is on the heels of God's people in the middle of that roller coaster. Everyone was doing what was right in their own eyes. And so God permitted his enemies to attack and plunder his people, just to pull from his people and to attack them, until he would then bring in a judge, someone who would step in to rescue them, only to have it start all over again, this up and down for the people. And now what we've seen is corruption in the priesthood, and the people are tired of their current situation. They're tired of it. They want a king who will come in and get everything in order. They want a king who will come in and move them forward as a stable people. And they say, we saw this last week, they say, we want a king like the other nations. And so they demand of Samuel that he get him a king. And God knew this was going to happen. In fact, he told Moses in the wilderness that it would happen, and he made allowances for it. This king would not be like the other kings, even though the people wanted a king like the other nations. He would not be like that. He was to be a king who directed all of the attention back to God, but that's not what the people want. They want a militarily strong king. They want a king who will fight their battles. They want a king who will lead them well. They want a king who will judge their affairs. So God tells Samuel, give them what they want. Now, before we get to the text this morning, can we just get to a place of admitting that there are times that we want that as well? We want what we want, and we want God to give that to us. The people of God were not worse off than we have sometimes been. Maybe we are even now. That some of us may even now be in a place where we want what we want, even if we have to have God added on later. We want what we want, and God, if you're going to be added on, then fine, that's okay. Let's not distance ourselves from the people of Samuel's day and say, well, that was them back then, and they didn't know what was up, but we do. We're better off. We want what we want, and when we want it, there are times that God gives it to us, knowing that it's not going to be the thing that ultimately satisfies us. He knows that. But we have to keep in mind, for the people of Samuel's day as well as for our own hearts, even in those moments that are given to us by God, that God is forcing us to see our deepest longings and desires are never going to be met by something else, are never going to be met by someone else. Our deepest longings and desires will only be met by Him. And that can be really confusing. It can get really confusing that God would give us what we're demanding, even knowing that ultimately it's not good for us. That can feel confusing. At times it can feel like God is hands off, where He would say, okay, go for it. If a kid asks, maybe parents, you have experienced this, if a kid asks for something you know is not best for them, but as a parent, you've either been, you've been worn down, you've been there, where you're like, fine. You've been worn down, or you've become apathetic, or on your best day, you have a desire for them to learn from their lesson on their own. You would finally get to this place, whatever the case is, you get to this place of saying, fine, go for it. And it's hands off. And that place where you are intentionally relinquishing control of the situation and allowing it to run its course. And that's not just kids, it can be us as well. We can feel this from others as well, with coworkers and spouses and friends and whatever, where we just get to this place of, fine, go for it. Fine. I'm tired of arguing. I'm tired of keeping this conversation going. Fine, go for it. And because of that, how we interact with one another, we can often feel that way from God, and it can feel confusing, where He's hands off. He's allowing me to go through this. He's permitting me to go. He's relinquishing control because ultimately I'm going to do what I'm going to do. We feel that. It can be confusing, but here's what we're going to see in chapters 9 and 10 this morning. Even in those moments where it seems as if God has relinquished any involvement in our current situation, He's absolutely involved. Even in those moments where it seems like God has relinquished any involvement in our current situation, He's absolutely involved. And you all some of you might be in a place right now where you feel like God is hands off. Where He's hands off, He's allowing things to run its course. Can I just encourage you right now, He's not out of this. He's in. He's pushing in. He's near. He's present. He's not reacting to our plan and trying to figure out what to do next. He's absolutely involved from beginning to end. There's not a thing that one of us is going through right now that God doesn't know about intimately. He's involved from beginning to end. His plan will absolutely stand. It will be carried out. The end result of that plan for the people in 1 Samuel, as well as the end result for us, is that we would recognize that we will always be longing until we experience the reign of the King. Do you believe that in your life right now? That what you're walking through in these days, the hard things and the joyful, beautiful things and everything in between are a part of God's plan for you. I'm not saying, do you understand what He's doing? I'm saying, do you understand that it is a part of His plan for you in some way? And a part of that plan is, at least a big chunk of that plan, is to turn you back to Him, that you would see more of Him. Do you believe that this morning? That the things that you're walking through, the ups and the downs, the good and the bad, are a part of his plan to point you back to himself, that he is absolutely not in a place where he's saying, fine, go for it, and he's hands off. We have 2 chapters to cover, and we'll see more of this. So we'll summarize quite a bit as we see God's plan unfolding. And in fact, that's what we see in the very first verses of chapter 9, God's man and God's plan. So what we see in these first several verses, God's man and God's plan. Look at chapter 9, verse 1. It says, there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, son of Zeror, son of Bechorath, son of Aphiah, a Benjamite, a man of wealth. And he had a son whose name was Saul, a handsome young man. There was not a man among the people of Israel more handsome than he. From his shoulders upward, he was taller than any of the people. This is what sets the stage for us. We'll see here in a second that it is God's man, but this is what sets the stage for us by introducing us to Saul. And we'll see in a moment God's plan. We're told that Saul's dad was Kish from the tribe of Benjamin. And Benjamin was an insignificant tribe. It didn't stand out as a really significant tribe among the 12. A tribe that had caused a lot of problems. In fact, the last 3 chapters of the book of Judges, if you want to look back at those at some point, the last 3 chapters of the book of Judges are all about the tribe of Benjamin and all of their rebellion and the problems that had occurred because of them. Listen, God chooses a man from an insignificant, rebellious tribe. But he's handsome, right? And no one's more handsome than Saul. And he's tall, right? Taller than everyone else around. Here's what the author is getting at and what we need to see from that from the perspective of the people and what the people wanted, this guy is the guy they want leading them. He's got all of the admirable, at least outward traits that we're looking for. But we dig a little further into the text and we see the story unfolding. He lives at home with his parents. Many believe, based on some things we'll see in the coming chapters, that Saul is probably near 40 years old. Look at verse 3. Now the donkeys of Kish, Saul's father, were lost. So Kish said to Saul, his son, take one of the young men with you and arise and go look for the donkeys. So put this together. Saul, a 40-year-old, handsome and tall man from an insignificant, rebellious tribe still living at home, is asked by his dad to go find the donkeys. Now, based on just 3 verses that we're stepping into of these 2 chapters that we will walk through this morning, would you say that's the man right there? Right? There's no way. If we put together a search committee for a new king and we get his resume and what we see so far is on his resume, our response is probably to write a very kind letter back and say, we've decided to go a different direction, right? That's what he would get. Saul, a 40-year-old donkey-chasing son of a Benjamite, is probably not the one we're choosing. But he's handsome, right? And he's powerful. He's tall. And while all of that's true, wouldn't we have to say that God must have some plan if this is the direction that we're headed? If this is the man, I'll tell you where we're going. This is the man that they're choosing to be over them. At times, things are outside of the realm of understandable possibilities that we have to say, God is doing something here. Or at least ask the question, God, what are you doing here? But either way, we have to turn and look to God. And so Saul, the servant, and the servant go on a donkey search, right? To go from place to place looking for the donkeys that are lost, but they cannot find the donkeys. And so finally, Saul says in verse 5, let's go back home. My dad's probably worried about me. Right? Just put in your mind, 40-year-old guy living at home. My dad's probably worried about me, and at some point he's going to stop being worried, and he's going to not care much about the donkeys and just be worried about us. And so the servant says in verse 6, hey, not so fast, Saul. We got to do what we've been asked to do. There's a prophet in Zuph, and everything he says comes true. So let's go ask him and see if that prophet can help us find the donkeys. Don't lose sight of what's going on here. In this, from my perspective, humorous story. A handsome and tall 40-year-old son of a Benjamite is on a donkey hunt. And the servant who he's brought with him says, let's go ask a nearby local prophet of God if he can help us find these donkeys. It's wild. And still Saul says in verse 7, that's a great plan, but if we go, shouldn't we take a gift? It just continues to snowball. Shouldn't we take a gift, which was the custom of the day? If you go to a prophet and you're seeking a word from God, that you would bring a gift. Shouldn't we take him a gift? We don't have anything, though. We've eaten all of our bread. That's all we have. And so the servant says, well, I've got a small silver coin I can give him so that he can help us. And I'm not making this up. You can look at it. Saul says in verse 10, well said. Well said, my man, right? So let's go. And they take off to the city to meet this prophet. When they get to the city, they meet a group of young women who are on their way to get water, and Saul asks this group of young women in verse 11, is the seer here, or is the prophet of God here? And they answer, yeah, he is. He's just up the road, but hurry because he's headed up to the place of sacrifices right now. If you hurry, you'll catch him before he goes there to eat. Everyone is waiting on him to get there so that he can bless the food, so you need to hurry. So this is all timed events. So Saul and his servant go, and we're told in verse 14 that as they're entering the city, they see whom? Samuel. Coming toward them on his way to the place of sacrifices. The seer, or this prophet of God, in that place was Samuel. So all together now. A handsome and tall 40-year-old son of a Benjamite is on a lost donkey hunt. And just before giving up, the servant says, I've got a coin, let's pay a prophet, let's figure this out. They find some water-fetching women, and they say, where is this prophet? And as they're walking into the city, Samuel is walking toward them. You can't make all of these events up. It's in the story. It's wild. It's out of the ordinary. It seems haphazard and scattered all over the place. Friends, think about your life. If you were to describe your week to me right now, I bet donkey searching is probably pretty normal compared to what you've walked through. Scattered, it's busy, it's random, at least from our perspective, events all over the place. Trying to figure out rides and meals and all the things that are going on. You might even look at the so-called random events of your week and think, I don't know, I guess God is in it somewhere, but I have no idea where. But this is the beginning of the story of God's man and God's plan for that man. And here's how we know. Look at verse 15. Chapter 9. Now the day before Saul came, the Lord had revealed to Samuel. So get it all together. The day before all of this just happened that we just walked through, the Lord had revealed to Samuel. We're backing up to the day before the one that just went down, before the donkeys wandered away, before the donkey rescue squad ran out of bread, before they had a plan to find a prophet, before these women pointed them in the right direction, before Samuel was walking down the road toward them. Look at verse 16. Tomorrow about this time, here's what the Lord revealed to Samuel. Tomorrow about this time, I will send to you a man from the land of Benjamin, and you shall appoint him to be a prince over my people Israel. He shall save my people from the hand of the Philistines, for I have seen my people, because their cry has come to me. When Samuel saw Saul, the Lord told him, here's the man of whom I speak to you. He it is who shall restrain my people." Then Saul approached Samuel in the gate and said, so now we're back up to the point where we are. Saul approached Samuel in the gate and said, "Tell me, where is the house of the seer?" Samuel answered Saul, "I am the seer. Go up before me to the high place, for today you shall eat with me, and in the morning I will let you go and will tell you all that is on your mind. As for your donkeys that were lost 3 days ago, do not set your mind on them, for they have been found, and for whom is all that is desirable in Israel? Is it not for you and for all your father's house?" Saul answered, "Am I not a Benjamite from the least of the tribes of Israel? And is not my clan the humblest of all the clans of the tribe of Benjamin? Why then have you spoken to me in this way?" Then Samuel took Saul and his young men and brought them into the hall and gave them a place at the head of those who had been invited, who were about 30 persons. And Samuel said to the cook, "Bring the portion I gave you, of which I said to you, put it aside." So the cook took up the leg and what was on it and set them before Saul. And Samuel said, "See, what was kept is set before you. Eat, because it was kept for you until the hour appointed, that you might eat with the guests." This is God's man. Everything that has happened with the donkeys and the women and the place of the sacrifice in the city where Saul and his servants stopped their search, all of that and all the things that we've walked through, all of those things were planned by God to direct Samuel to Saul and Saul to Samuel. This is God's man, and God had a plan for that man. Friends, can I just ask us to get it to us, because it's not just back then, for us, what is going on in your day? What is going on in your week, in your year, in your life that is directing you to exactly what God has for you? What is it? I'm not saying you're going to be Israel's next king, so don't get it to that place of exact connection. You're not Israel's next king. But listen, do you believe God has something for you in the things that are happening in your life? That they're there for a reason. Do you have a space? Let's just pause and put in some application. Do you have a space in your day where you are intentionally thinking back on your day or forward on your day about what is going on in your life and how God might be using that thing, directing that thing, not just using it, but also directing that thing, planning that thing so that in some way you might move toward Him and what He has for you? Do you have space in your day where you have planned intentionality to look for that? To see it, to look to see where God is and what He's doing? I ask that again because I need to hear it. I've strayed from that a bit. Do you have space in your day and your life where you're intentionally thinking about how God might be working on you? I've had a habit of journaling. I was with a friend yesterday and he said, "Hey, how's that going?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not in a place in my life where I've had the regular rhythm of just thinking back about what God is doing, and I need to get there." It was a good nudge for me. Do you have space in your life where you have intentional time to look at what God is doing in your life? I was texting with a friend earlier this last week, talking to them back and forth about some things that they had coming up, a way in which they were going to be spending some time away and just processing through some things. And that time didn't go exactly as they had hoped. And coincidentally, I was right in the middle of kind of working through these verses when we were texting back and forth. And so my response to them, and I didn't mean it as a I told you so or this heavy-handed thing. My response was, "Hey, I'm sorry that things haven't gone the way that you were hoping, but can I ask, what does God have even in that for you?" Do you have space in your life to consider that? Do you have time, silence in your day to think about the day that you had and what God might be doing there? God had a plan for Samuel to meet Saul, and he worked out all of the details for that to happen. God had a plan for Samuel to meet a man from an insignificant, rebellious tribe of people, and that plan included, listen, lost donkeys. Right? What seemingly insignificant events in your life is God using to direct your heart to Him. They're there. What are you looking for them? We've got to slow down. Again, I'm not comparing the importance of this passage directly to our lives. None of us are going to be the next king of Israel. But God uses the things of our day to redirect our attention to Him. Are we expecting it? Are we watching for it? God's man, Saul, sits down with Samuel, and he feasts on the meat that was set aside for the priest. But Samuel says it was set aside for you until the hour appointed for you to eat it. There's a bigger plan in place than lost donkeys. There's a bigger plan in place than all of the events that Saul has just recently walked through. God says to Samuel, this is the man you will anoint to be prince. You'll see that a couple times, meaning not yet king, leader of the people, ruler and leader of the people, making way for the kings who are coming, God's man and God's plan. And if he's to be prince, if he's to be leader, ruler over God's people, making the way for God's plan to bring about kings, then this leader will be anointed. Be anointed by God. God's man is anointed. We're told in verse 25 of chapter 9 that after they feasted at the high place, they came back to the city, and a place was set up for Saul to sleep for the night, to stay the night on the roof, where it was likely cooler. This was a hospitable thing, so like this was for back then. Don't put a guest on your roof. It was cooler there. In the morning, Samuel calls for Saul and says, okay, let's get up, let's get going. I'm going to send you on your way back home. And so Samuel begins to walk with Saul to the edge of the city, and he tells the servant in that moment, he says, hey, why don't you go on ahead? I've got some things I need to talk to Saul about. And when the servant leaves them, Samuel says, stop for a second, Saul, just stop. Let me tell you what God has given to me as a word for you. Look at chapter 10, verse 1. It says, Samuel took a flask of oil and poured it on his head and kissed him and said, has not the Lord anointed you to be prince over his people Israel? And you shall reign over the people of the Lord, and you will save them from the hand of their surrounding enemies. And this shall be the sign to you that the Lord has anointed you to be prince over his heritage. Just Samuel and Saul on the road. Samuel pours oil on Saul's head, a typical anointing, a typical initiating rite for a leader of the day, especially one who would then become king. He says, you'll reign over God's people and you'll rescue them from their enemies. This has got to be strange for Saul. Remember, he's out looking for donkeys, and now this is where he is. He says, you'll reign over God's people, you'll rescue them. Saul cannot comprehend why someone like him would be given this role. Samuel says, there's going to be some confirmation. You're going to know that this is from God, a word from God. It will be very clear to you that what I am saying to you is absolutely true, and this is how you will know. And then he walks through it. Verse 2, first. He says, you'll meet two men by Rachel. Look at how specific this is. You'll meet two men by Rachel's tomb, and they will say to you, the donkeys have been found. Your dad doesn't care about the donkeys anymore. He's worried about you. You'll meet these men. Second, in verse 3, he says, as you continue to travel, you'll come to an oak tree in Tabor, and three men who are traveling up to make sacrifices in Bethel will meet you. One will have 3 young goats, one will have 3 loaves of bread, and the other man will have a bottle of wine. Verse 4, they'll greet you, and they'll give you 2 of the 3 loaves of bread. This is specific. Verse 5, third, he says, you will find a group of prophets who have come down from the place of worship carrying He's very specific, a harp and a tambourine and a flute and a lyre. And they will be prophesying, and the Spirit of God will rush upon you, and you will prophesy with them and be turned into another man. Now listen, in every place in Scripture where we're told that the Spirit of God rushes upon someone, it does so to equip them for what God is going to do in and through them. In every place. This changes and transforms a person. It's a very specific set of confirming words from Samuel to Saul. Why? Here's why. God knew that Saul would need that kind of confirmation to give him the courage to step forward. This is a 40-year-old man who still lives with mom and dad under the dark cloud of being a Benjamite, one who's sort of looked down upon. He's going to need courage. He's going to need some affirmation that this is absolutely from God. God has instructed Samuel to anoint Saul as the one who would soon become king. Samuel says to Saul in verse 7, when these signs of affirmation come, it's time to step forward as a leader, and God will be with you. So Saul, go back to Gilgal. I'll be there in 7 days to offer burnt offerings and peace offerings and tell you what is next. God's man has been anointed. When God has a plan, that plan will be carried out. Very specific events will be arranged so that the plan of God will happen. God will change and transform hearts by the power and movement of the Spirit so that this plan will be carried out using people like Saul. Friends, listen, using people like you. Would you consider that this morning? If God has moved in your heart to call you to himself, that the Spirit has been active in your life, is now currently active in your life, would you consider this, that God is moving you, has a plan for you. He's changing your heart to make it happen, to carry that out. We're told that as soon as Saul turned to leave Samuel, God gave him another heart. God changed his heart. God worked on Saul as the Spirit rushed over him and brought change to him. This is what we see, God's man and a new heart for this man. If God was going to carry something out, he's going to have to bring change. We're told all of the signs, all of the confirmation that Samuel gave to Saul came to pass. A group of prophets met Saul. Saul prophesied with them. He was a changed man. We know that in part by what is said in chapter 10, verse 11. Look at it. It says, when all who knew him previously saw how he prophesied with the prophets, the people said to one another, what's come over the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets? Or, in other words, what happened here with this guy? This guy who's been living at home, this guy who at best is going out to search for donkeys, now is prophesying with the prophets. There has been a change. It's probable that the people knew Saul and saw a very clear change about him. Can I say it this way? The man that God will use, God will change. The woman who God will use, God will change. And so for you, I'll ask you, do you sense a change in your own heart? Some leaning, some longings. Do you sense a change in your own heart? If so, what do you think God is up to? Do you sense a change in your own heart? If so, what do you think God's up to there? Do you sense a change in the heart of someone near you, someone who you're close to in relationship, someone who you know really well? You sense a change in their heart. They've been softened. They've become discerning where they haven't been before. That there's been a change about them. What is God up to in them? Could God be nudging you forward as he's changing your heart? Could God be nudging you to talk to your friend, to encourage them to move forward? Might God use you to affirm what you see in a friend, that they would step forward, encouraged to take on what God is calling them to be about? Friends, when there is a change in our hearts, God is preparing us for what is next. What is that? The one God will use, God will change. Do we see it? Are we experiencing it? Do we even have space in our lives to consider that? We're told that Saul's uncle approaches Saul, verse 14. He approaches Saul and he asks Saul, where have you been? How do you even answer that question, right? Saul tells him that he went out to look. This is how you answer it. He says, I went out to look for donkeys, but I couldn't find him. Oh, and by the way, I ran into Samuel. And Saul's uncle knows Samuel, and he says, well, okay, tell me, I don't care about the donkeys. Tell me what Samuel said. Look at verse 16. Saul said to his uncle, he told us plainly that the donkeys had been found. That's what he tells his uncle. That Samuel says. He told us plainly that the donkeys have been found. But about the matter of the kingdom of which Samuel had spoken, he did not tell him anything. Saul's taking seriously this waiting period of 7 days. Remember, Samuel says in 7 days I'll be there. And so Saul's taking that seriously before he alerts anything about what's coming. Is there some sort of insecurity there? Is there something going on where he's unsure that this is actually going to happen? Whatever it is, he tells his uncle, yep, he told us about the donkeys. Samuel has this role of showing the people now that God is in this, that God has a plan, that it wasn't just Samuel who arbitrarily chose a guy. It wasn't Samuel who was doing this. They would probably not be too keen on a Benjamite being their king. And so Samuel has to show them that this is God's man and also that God has a plan. Again, God's man and God's plan. And this is how the chapter ends out. Samuel gathers the people together in verse 17. He reminds them why they're there. In fact, I want you to see this. Look at verse 18. We'll start in 17. Samuel called the people together to the Lord at Mizpah, and he said to the people of Israel, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I brought you up, Israel, out of Egypt, and I delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of all the kingdoms that were oppressing you. But today you have rejected your God, who saves you from your calamities and your distresses, and you have said to him, set a king over us. Now, therefore, present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and by your thousands. That's a challenging reminder to the people as Samuel has gathered them together. Samuel puts it back on the people. You've rejected God. Don't forget that. You've rejected God, the same God who has delivered you in the past, and you have a history of God delivering you over and over and over again. You've rejected him, and you want a king instead of him. And then Samuel groups the people together, and we're told in verse 20 that the tribe of Benjamin was taken by Lot. A rolling of the dice, a drawing of straws. This is a way in which God has used for years now to show his people that he was absolutely over all things, even as they rolled the dice. I'm not suggesting that. This is just a way in which God has worked in the past. And so the tribe of Benjamin was taken by Lot. Verse 21, the clan of the Matrites was chosen by Lot. They roll the dice once more. Saul, the son of Kish, is chosen by Lot. But where is he? No one can find him. Here, they roll the dice, they choose the tribe, the clan, and then the person, and no one could find him. And so look at what it says in verse 22. So they inquired, the people inquired again of the Lord. They go straight to God. Is there a man still to come? And the Lord said, behold, he's hidden himself among the baggage. He's hidden people among, or he's hidden among the baggage. If it's God's man and God's plan, no plan of man will hinder God's plan, and so God points him out. There he is. All of the people who have gathered at Mizpah stowed their luggage off in the corner, and Saul is hiding. I think this is funny. If you remember everything that we've already walked through, it's like a kid playing hide and seek that hides behind a tree that's a third the size of the kid, right? I'm hiding, no one can see me. Have you played that? Saul, a tall man, head and shoulders over other people, hiding in the luggage. Like, I just get this picture of like luggage knee high, and he's standing there. Look at verse 24. And Samuel said to all the people, "Do you see him? Do you see him whom the Lord has chosen? There's none like him among all the people." And all the people shouted, "Long live the king." Do you see him? Yeah, the guy who's waist high in luggage. Do you see him? The Lord has chosen him. There's none like him. And all the people say together, "Long live the king." They went to God, and God responded to them, "Here he is. I have a plan to make this 40-year-old man who can't find a donkey the king." If it's God's man and God's plan, no plan of man will hinder God's plan. And while the people had in mind that they wanted a king like the other nations, God had a different plan. And so we're told in verse 25 that Samuel tells the people what this king, God's covenant king, would be about. That he would point the people to God. And Samuel writes it all down in a book, and he lays the book before the Lord. Some think that Samuel puts the book on the Ark of the Covenant as a way of saying, this stands as God's plan from here on for his people, that all the people would be directed back to God. And if you're in any kind of leadership role, here's a mini lesson about leadership. We're told that some of the people stood in solidarity with Saul. And verse 27 tells us some of the worthless fellows criticized, saying, "How can this man save us?" They despised him, but Saul held his peace. If you're in any leadership kind of role, you've experienced both. There's some who are going to stand with you, and there's some from the very beginning who are going to criticize you. But what does Saul do? He stands his peace. He stands his peace. Somewhere deep down, Saul knew that God had a plan, and that for some reason he was the man. God has not removed his presence from the people. Yet the people have rejected God. God is giving them what they demand, but he's not abandoned them. He's still near. He's still directing and orchestrating everything so that the people would see more and more of him, so that the people would desire to be near him, so that the people would desire to obey and follow God. All of the direction is pointed back to God. It can feel at times as if God is hands off. God's not left us. While it can feel at times like God is hands off, fine, do it your way. He's not left us. There may be times when it feels as if God has relinquished any involvement in our lives altogether, but friend, can I tell you, it's simply not true. He's near. He's present. He's with us. So maybe if you're in a place of not experiencing that, or just sort of confused about where God is, and it feels like he's said, "I'm hands off here," maybe a prayer that you would lift up to God is, "God, would you come," just simple, "God, come near. God, reveal yourself to me. God, help me to see you. Even when my life feels like your hands off, would you help me to consider that you're near? Would you help me to see that as a truth?" Help. Here's where we'll close this morning. Words from another man by the name of Saul, changed to Paul because of a heart change from God. Words from Paul to the men of Athens. As Paul walks through the city and sees the different things that the people have leaned toward, Paul walks through and has words for the men and women of Athens who have struggled to believe that God is who he says he is. Don't believe it all. Walks through the city and has words for a people who have struggled to believe that God has a plan, that God knows all things. They've struggled to believe that this God is worthy of worship. And so Paul is walking through the city and he says this. We don't have it on the screen, so I'll just read it. Chapter 17 of Acts, verses 24 through 27. I want you to listen to this. Paul says to a group of people who are struggling to believe that God exists and he is who he says he is, he says, "The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God, and perhaps feel their way toward him and find them. Yet he's actually not far from each one of us." There's a God who has made the world and everything in it. And he's Lord of heaven and earth. And he doesn't need us. He's not served by us. He doesn't need us. And he made us to have allotted periods of time and places that we would live. He's not hands off. He's all hands in. He's involved. He's intimately involved with where we are. And he does that so that we would see more of him, so that we would run to him. We're told in that very last sentence, he's not far off from each of us. He's very near. So I don't know where you are this morning. If you're in a place of wondering, where's God? He seems far off. He seems hands off. He seems like he's just relinquished any role in my life at all. He just stepped away. If that's where you are, would you consider, no. He's near. He's moved in. He's present. And maybe it's that you can't see him. Maybe it's that you haven't experienced him. Maybe it's that there are other things going on in your life that have blinded you from seeing that God is very present and he's near. You would just open-handedly say, God, I need you to be near, and I need to see you, and I need to experience your presence, and would you come and be near? So I want to pray for us this morning in that direction. We've all been there. Maybe some of you are there even now. That God has a plan for us, that he's intimately involved, that he's moving us forward to see more of him. And we're going to celebrate around these tables. Let's pray. God, I'll start with a question for you. Why would you use people like us? Our resume is probably not even as impressive as Saul's. Why would you use people like us to be a part of the things that you're accomplishing here in this life? You are. And so my prayer for my own heart, for my friends here this morning, is that we would recognize that you are intimately involved in our lives. You have events in front of us. You have the things that we have walked through in our past. All of those things, you have been present. You're not far off. You're intimately involved. My prayer is that you'd wake us up to that. You'd help us to believe that you are present, The seemingly mundane things of our life are there so that we would see more of you. So for my friends here this morning who have been in a place, who are in a place where they feel like you are hands off, that they would understand very clearly that no, you're present, you're near, there's something in what they're walking through that you have for them to see more of you. Would you help them to believe that? For those of us who have been in a place of distance from you, or in a place of not taking the time to see you, not taking the time to count the ways in which you have been involved in our lives, would you wake us up and pull us back into that? That we would take the time to see you in your word, see you as we think about and meditate on you, that we would see more and more of you, that you'd wake us up to that you're intimately involved in the things of our lives, and that you're moving us forward to see more of you, that it's not a mistake, it's not an accident, it's not wasted time. You have something for us, even today. And you've invited us in to be near you through what you've done in Jesus. In his name we pray.